Coffeezilla versus Logan Paul. You've heard about it. You've seen it. Millions of people everywhere have been watching the three-part series by Coffeezilla on CryptoZoo headed up by Logan Paul. Now, Logan Paul has released a video as well, addressing all of Coffeezilla's concerns, basically calling him an outright liar and telling him that he's probably going to sue him. But what's very interesting is this has become a battle between two YouTubers. And in the middle is a story about CryptoZoo that we've got a lot more to fill in the details on. We're going to show you some of the things that Coffeezilla didn't, and then we're going to show you the latest development. You should be outraged. Let's get it. Welcome to BitSquad Crypto. My name is Ben. We're going to be breaking down this whole thing for you today and giving you some information that you didn't know, that really nobody knew. We're going to be revealing it today. Okay, so here is Coffeezilla. This is Social Blade. This is a tracker of social sentiment and how you're growing when you are a content creator. Check this out here. Man, look at these views. 4 million views, 2 million views. That's a lot of views to get in one day. But this is what I want to show you guys here. From the video series with Coffeezilla versus Logan Paul and CryptoZoo, I tell you what, Coffeezilla is not a guy that really loves crypto, but I'm telling you, the DJs are saying he might be the next Shiba Inu. Look at that chart. This guy's gone absolutely parabolic. He does great videos. He does a lot of in-depth research, but he seems to have a negative bias a lot of times. In my opinion, maybe you don't feel that way. And people like to see people get destroyed, and he does a really good job with that. Now, there have been some people that have been critical of Coffeezilla that said that he really only went after Logan Paul a year after this debacle in order to get clicks because Logan is a big name. Don't take my word for it.
You have successfully used my name for views and money. While your work used to be impartial, your addiction to clicks has clouded your judgment and you've made very real errors with very real repercussions. Coffee, you took a shot at my reputation. So in this video today, I'm gonna be defending myself with facts, something that you have gotten in the habit of twisting as you continue to morph from an investigator to a gossip channel.
Now, is this fair criticism? Well, I mean, people say, look at me, I'm making a video about Logan Paul and Coffeezilla, so maybe I'm double clout chasing. But the fact is, I think there might be some criticism there, and this is why, we're gonna talk about this later on in the video. Certainly, CryptoZoo has been a debacle. I don't think there's any hiding that. However, a lot of what Logan Paul and the CryptoZoo team did is just like a gigantic amount of crypto projects out there. They've been brought in the spotlight because of Logan Paul. And these are not your average crypto people that were invested in CryptoZoo. These are mainstream people that were just under his influence. They're not really crypto people. So while Logan Paul is getting the blame for all of this, a lot of crypto companies who did the exact same thing, they're skating right through. But due to all the attention from Coffeezilla given to Logan Paul, well, Paul's been backed up into a corner. He might be on the ropes. You see, his plan was to wait it out and not address this. He stayed silent about this situation, knowing that it was a disaster. He stayed silent on this situation, I don't know, maybe hoping that the price would go up, hoping people would forget about it, hoping something would happen in the intermediary that would prevent him from having to come out and make a spectacle and talk about this. But now, not only Coffeezilla, but it's the community that Logan Paul is having to face.
How much did you guys make from CryptoZoo?
I lost around $50,000 in CryptoZoo.
I lost $40,000.
I lost around 15,000 US dollars.
I lost $25,000.
$120,000.
$500,000 Australian, which is $500,000 in CryptoZoo.
But this video series has been so popular, it's not just the community that he's having to talk to. It's the millions of people who've now seen this video series that maybe didn't even have a dog in the fight here. So the better strategy might have been to keep people updated as it was going along, even if it wasn't going well, instead of waiting for this to all hit at once. This has obviously been a big hit to Logan's reputation that he had been working to repair. All right, so let's talk about what actually happened in the story here. Okay, this is a pretty good article when it comes to laying out the situation. There are some mistakes on it that I'm gonna point out, but I like the way it flowed, so this is kind of what we're gonna use to go over this. In his latest installment, Coffeezilla looked into CryptoZoo, a game-like platform Designed to allow users to breed, collect, and trade exotic animal hybrids on the blockchain, each animal is treated as an NFT, and the whole system will use CryptoZoo exclusive tokens, Zoo. Crikeys. The main personality attached to this, of course, is Logan Paul. This is what he had to say about it.
CryptoZoo.co. I am so excited about this project. It's so fun. It's a really fun game that makes you money.
Now, it's actually a pretty interesting idea for a game or for maybe play to earn, passive income, something like that, some things we talk about in crypto. But meet Axie Infinity. It's actually pretty similar. You have these little characters, you grow them, you breed them. I mean, isn't this all just Tamagotchi? I don't understand it, but people like this stuff. So it is what it is. Well, people who were playing Axie Infinity back during the bull run specifically in the Philippines were making a ton of money with its play to earn features. So there is a model that shows that it can work if you do it right. In fact, I would say that CryptoZoo is exactly like Axie Infinity if they never launched the game or built anything or had any users. The concept for CryptoZoo was born in 2020 during an episode of Paul's Impulsive Comedy Podcast. That's funny, because he never said it in 2020. You will find article after article saying that this was launched in 2020 and I may know why possibly people think that. First time this was talked about on the Impulsive Podcast was August 17th, 2021, only 2 weeks before they were going to launch on September 1st. So the concept for CryptoZoo was actually born in 2021 during an episode where he promotes a game claiming that the crew had spent 6 months crafting handmade NFTs that would be the project's highlight. Handmade in a sense that someone had to be on a computer and move some clicks around when they combine the Adobe stock photos. Let's see here. According to him, $1 million would be raised to fund the development of the game and the creation of one-of-a-kind NFTs. This $1 million was supposed to be paid to some developers. There's a long story there. I don't think it's actually super important. Just know the CryptoZoo team never built anything, and then we had the developers that were working for them. They also never did their jobs either. So basically a gigantic cluster. And here you can look at some of these awesome whales and bears and things, I guess. I'm not trying to make fun of the project, which a lot of people would probably want me to do. But the fact is, the art was terrible. There's no question about that. In 2021, CryptoZoo featured some of its so-called NFT animals. The game consists of eggs that users have to purchase with Zoo tokens. Eggs are then supposed to be hatched and then bred with other NFT animals, create hybrids, with the platform putting a premium on more unusual combinations. It was proved impossible to hatch the eggs. Logan Paul says that's absolutely not correct. There are people that hatched eggs. Some people had some problems. Was it user error? I don't really know. But the fact is, users definitely never recovered their money. Now, here's something really interesting, is this here. We're gonna come back to this in just a moment. So check out Coffeezilla, breaking down the structure of this project and being surprised that you can make passive income in crypto. Don't tell Alex Mashinsky.
You started by buying this crypto token called Zoo, which is their in-game currency, and you use Zoo coins to then buy egg NFTs, which you can then hatch to become animals. You then can breed those two animals to become hybrid animals. For example, if you breed a gorilla and a kitten, you get a gore kitty. And the more rare the NFT, the higher the daily yield of Zoo tokens that animal earns you every day. Theoretically, it works like almost like passive income.
Now we have the $2.5 million sale of the NFT eggs. This was actually the sale of the NFT, so to speak. Now, this $2.5 million is very interesting because when Logan Paul earlier said, and this is something that we're only going to get on this video, when Logan Paul said that he had the $1 million, they invested in the project, he later on implies that that was supposed to go to the developer. Well, I've been told that in reality, this $2.5 million is the most important aspect of this entire story. Why? The money for the devs was supposed to come out of the $2.5 million sale for the NFTX. That's why this came out before the platform was built. That did not happen. They did not use this money for that. What happened to this money? I mean, I guess they spent it, they put it in their bank accounts, they split it up. I don't know where it ended up, but I know where it didn't end up, which is with the developers. So theoretically, if that money would have gone to the development, this whole entire story and saga could be different. And I do believe that when Logan Paul set this out, I think that he did want to create a game. And actually, we're going to talk about why that's definitely true in a little bit. But somewhere things went astray. This is the beginning. Now check out this chart. By October, the zoo had lost almost all of its value. Let's check this out here. Man, look at that. Wow. That's a terrible looking chart, isn't it? Man, too bad this is not the right token. Look, the people that did this article, the deep dive, this is a great article. They did a great job. This is another mistake. They actually put the Zoot token, which is not the right token. This is a token on CoinGecko, you can see here. Maybe worth less than ZooCoin or CryptoZoo or whatever we want to call it. Man, that's wild. This is the original Zoo token, okay? You can check out it on Binance Smart Chain. You can see a lot of the analytics, a lot of the trades. Here you can see that all the activity started when they announced this on the Impulsive podcast. Now this is right before they created a second token. Why? We're going to talk about that later on, but the second token is, of course, New Crypto Zoo. And this is a chart that is, you're definitely going to want to see, because this is the disaster that you came here for. That, the opposite of the Social Blade Shiba Inu chart of CoffeeZilla, this is the inverse. This is the crash, the pump and dump, so to speak. We're going to talk about why this happened, how this screwed people. You can look at all this, of course, as well on Binance Smart Chain. Check and see it's got much different analytics than the first project. It's been around a lot longer, but notice it hasn't done anything. This right here, if you see this spike at the beginning, this was an airdrop. We're going to talk about who got that airdrop and who didn't here in a few moments. CryptoZoo was slated to open in September of 2021. However, since May 28th, 2022, there's been no activity even on the Twitter account until yesterday, which was a few days ago when Logan Paul posted his video. If you go here, you can check out the website. Man, I tell you what, man, they really missed a good opportunity to say, biddle. Don't say biddle, please. Okay. Paul then broke his silence, accusing the project's chief developer, who allegedly stole the code and fled to Switzerland, how neutral, refusing to return it until he was paid $1 million. He added that he got involved with the wrong individuals who made blunders and stumbles, and the project was being worked on by a new team. He goes on to name several people that worked with him on this project that were bad news. And the fact is, some of them were really bad news. But you know, Logan, I don't hate Logan Paul. I kind of like him, to be honest with you. Outside of this situation, I think he's entertaining. I think he does a good job. I have nothing against him. I'm not a Logan Paul hater, just in the ethos of the world. But I do have to say, this video response, it did not hit the mark. Here's an example of why I think it didn't hit the mark.
And surely you knew Emilio, the gentleman who supposedly let his child invest in a cryptocurrency, was allegedly responsible for 2 rug pulls before you interviewed him. So either you missed that or you knew it and failed to let the public know. Why? Because it was a clear sign that he was also untrustworthy.
So Emilio apparently is a rug puller. Now, I don't have any information to back that up myself. And gotta say, when I did see that part in CoffeeZilla's video, he's talking about a kid, I've got a family, it hits a little bit different. But here's the thing, Logan, they're not all actors. If he is untrustworthy, then that's basically one of many. And I think by focusing on that, and I understand that you're pointing out that CoffeeZilla didn't do his homework on this, but this is not the move. The move is not to pick apart the things that don't apply, but to address the things that do. And this entire video comes off as a personal shot towards CoffeeZilla. You can feel the anger in Logan over this situation. Why is he so angry? In my opinion, I think he's very angry at CoffeeZilla. I think he's very angry about this project. I don't believe he wanted it to end up like this. Certainly CoffeeZilla would tell you that, Logan the entire time and every person that was on the team, all they cared about was money and they didn't actually build anything. That's every crypto project. That's how it is. You do raises, you get money. It's kind of a broken model. We've seen it work for ones that are really successful, but those that try to be fly by night, they come and go. But that is the norm in crypto. Raising money for blockchain projects, taking that funding, and then building the project. Sometimes it creates something called the founder's dilemma, where they've made so much money, they have no reason to actually build anything. And I wonder if that's kind of what actually happened here, because Logan Paul actually did not want anyone to sell any of the tokens. He was more concerned about the rising market cap over time. Other members of the team did not feel that way, but he really did have a long-term vision. But then things went terribly wrong, and it started with the stealth launch. This explains why we have two coins, an old Crypto Zoo and a new Crypto Zoo. In the first part, the video featured interviews with users who bought the eggs but are complaining that they can't hatch the NFTs. YouTuber also interviewed a developer who Paul claimed had taken the Crypto Zoo code hostage, who claimed the celebrity influencer didn't pay the developer at all, which is the reason he took the source code private. This is what I have learned to be true from all of my sources. Jeff Levin, now this is interesting. Coffeezilla really goes after Jeff Levin. He's the manager of Logan Paul, and he won't answer some of Coffeezilla's questions. Now, Coffeezilla recorded it without permission, and later on you'll see that's what Logan Paul says he will sue him for. Jeff Levin in this video is really kind of made out to be a bad guy. From what I understand, this was the best actor in the entire thing. Jeff Levin, the manager, he never sold any tokens, and he's the one that actually held this together, kind of like Jean-Claude Van Damme going between those two semi-trucks. The second part of the video focused on a certain Eddie Ibanez. Not any Eddie Ibanez, a certain Eddie Ibanez, who the developer also tied into the project as a middleman between them and Paul, partly pinning on the former as to why they haven't been paid. Ibanez apparently misrepresented his background. He said he helped the Eagles win the Super Bowl because he knew Eddie Ibanez actually came up with the Philly special. I don't know if that's true. Actually, I know that to not be true. But he would do this and try to make himself look very big and very important and has all this experience. He lied about all of it. Why? In order to make connections with big guys with money, big CEOs, venture capital people, and also how to sell himself to people like Logan Paul to work with him. I've been told Eddie Ibanez is definitely the worst actor in this entire thing. So if you're looking at a ranking system, you got Jeff Levin at the top, you got Eddie Ibanez at the bottom, everybody else is gonna fall somewhere in the middle. Now, here we have crypto personality Jake the Crypto King, who's an advisor in Crypto Zoo, also spoke to Coffeezilla saying Ibanez is the reason that the project fell. Now, what's really interesting is they always say advisor like he's nobody in the project, right? He was on the schedule to get 5% of the founder tokens that they never gave out. However, an advisor can be an important role, and actually, a lot of the input that was given from Crypto King to Logan Paul was passed on very quickly, very easily, and it was always a hard no. There will be more between Crypto King and Logan a little bit later on. Now, for full transparency, I know Crypto King. He's been on crypto Twitter forever. I actually remember when he was on crypto Twitter and he was doing all kinds of stuff with Pokemon cards, and he went and did a video with Logan Paul back in 2020. I thought it was pretty cool. It was a pretty interesting thing. Obviously, where we've gotten to now, we know some new things. I actually ran into him at Decentral at the end of November. He took a picture, he wanted a picture with me, and he put it on Twitter. And so I thought, maybe I'd want to find that. So sure, this is probably not someone that a ton of people want to have pictures with floating around the internet. I barely knew him, but he was always nice on Twitter. I thought he was a good follow, but since that picture existed, I wanted to go find it. So I went to his profile. His account is suspended. I then go to my tweeters verse. If someone has contact for Crypto King, yada, 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 talked to him many times, blah, 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 blah. Anyone know why his account was suspended? Very interesting when you start getting into this here. The word on the street is Logan Paul scandal is the reason his Twitter got suspended. But there's more. Didn't Logan Paul pay someone to suspend him? This is not, from my understanding, from my research and my confirmations, this is true. The spat between these two guys eventually leads Logan Paul to go to his Twitter rep. I don't know if it's a third-party company or directly to Twitter, but a rep that works with him and Twitter and paid to get that account suspended. And look, I've been told that there was a payment. I can't confirm that. I can't say for sure that he paid, but I can tell you with confidence, Logan Paul is the reason why this account is suspended. And whether or not you agree with what we're gonna look at the Crypto King did, the fact is, you can't have people going and paying Twitter to remove accounts. That is such an insanely dangerous precedent. And I'm gonna be posting a tweet on Twitter later. We're gonna tag Elon Musk, and we're gonna talk about this situation. This needs to be an outrage. And I've been told there's actually a lot of internal stuff going on with Twitter. There's a lot of arguing about what happened here, almost similar to what we were seeing back in the days of when the Twitter files were actually going on in real life and they were happening. This is the first step to getting rid of our free speech. It's kind of like if your kid says a bad word at home and you've been telling him, don't say the BM word, Bitcoin maximalism, don't say it. And he says it and he's in trouble. And the next day he goes to school. When he arrives in class, his teacher says, hey, you know what? Heard you said a bad word, you're gonna sit in the corner today. It's not really relevant what happened at home and what happened at school. What happened with this project, we don't know that anything illegal was done, for sure, but we do know SBF still has his account, the biggest fraud in the history of mankind. Do you guys see all it takes is the right people pushing the right buttons to get an account suspended? We need to stand up for free speech. Go check out the tweet. I'm gonna tweet later tonight about this. We need to start a conversation here, and I wanna see him get his account back. I mean, look guys, a lot of people wanna attack this guy. You can't do it, his account's suspended. But the fact is that I believe that does need to happen, and it does need to be restored. That's the latest going on in this situation that's currently evolving. This occurred on New Year's Eve. Why was New Year's Eve the time to push this through? Because many of the Twitter employees were not working and it went through much quicker, much easier, and Crypto King did not have a chance to appeal or see it in real time. Crypto King has a rep too, but on New Year's Eve, they were off. He couldn't go to that rep and prevent this from happening. Now, while Logan and Crypto King have beef, and we're gonna look at why, the fact is, even back here in this comment, Crypto King wasn't willing to say that Logan Paul was the reason for the downfall. He said it was Eddie Ibanez. I believe that in this situation, Logan Paul is probably somewhere in the middle of the good actor, bad actor scale. So let's check out these comments.
Right. One more thing about Eddie before we get off of him. We actually...
The biggest reason it failed, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because I don't want it to ever be thought that Logan's the reason it failed. He's not. Logan wasn't smart enough for what he tried to build. And then when it was built and was failing, didn't have the ability to correct it and to save face and reputation. It was more convenient to pull out than to be associated with a failing project that the dev rocked.
Basically, Crypto King says, Logan's not that bad, but he's really stupid. He's not smart enough to do this. Here is some of Logan's thoughts on crypto.
And it's going to be on the Binance Smart Chain. Just I'm saying this here now because the Ethereum network, the gas fees don't make sense for the type of continuous and frequent transactions taking place in our game. Like gas fees, by the way, for people who aren't in crypto, is when you make a transaction, if the network is clogged, you have to pay a fee to get your transaction from A to B. It's called gas.
Sounds like tax.
Pretty much.
Guys, a gas fee doesn't matter if it's clogged or not. You always will have to send a gas fee. Those are the little details that shows you he barely understands what he's talking about. And I know people might say, well, you know what? That is true. It does go when it's clogged, but also when it's not clogged. He had been fed the narrative that Binance Smart Chain was just better than Ethereum. And that is what he's regurgitating. Gas fees bad, BSC good. Why? Because their project was going to be on BSC if it ever launched. Okay, so once Eddie Ibanez was moved off the team, we had another development group come in, Black Ops. In the final installment, Coffeezilla disclosed leaked conversations among Paul, Levin, Ibanez, and Jake on Discord characterizing the birth and demise of CryptoZoo. Now, Jake, of course, is Crypto King. In March 2021, the foursome, wow, that's spicy, were trading messages about a project that Jake would like to be an imitation of Ethereum-based blockchain game, CryptoKitties. CryptoZoo was then known as CryptoPets, tied to a Pets token, with Jake predicting a valuation of $20 million in just 6 months. Pretty early on, it became clear this was all about money. How were they going to pull this off? Of course, this is what Coffeezilla says. Well, like I said before, guys, this is the way that things work in crypto and NFT projects. Just because you're talking about an expensive valuation, that doesn't mean that it's all about money. There were projects that got billion-dollar valuations in the bull run that now are worth almost nothing. You see, in crypto, things move very quickly, and if they had launched this at the right time, if they had sold the eggs, taken the money from the eggs, and paid the development, this might have actually worked. I don't think this was flawed from the very beginning. But once again, Coffeezilla is always going to show you the negativity. By the end of this, it does become about money because that's all they have left. Most of these start out as project-focused and money-focused. You know that you've got a good idea that's going to make a lot of money, and you get excited and the numbers start running and you start dreaming, and then you raise money and you get a whole bunch, and then things change. This is where Eddie Ibanez promised some crazy investors. It didn't happen, of course. Another exchange pointed out the foursome's worry on pre-selling the Zoo token is it would be subject to the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is important. What they did instead is launch the token covertly and only made the public announcement 2 months after. They would buy the tokens from the liquidity pool still at a discount like what it would be with a pre-sale since the token wasn't publicly launched yet. There's a big problem launching something like this in the United States. They can't do a pre-sale. This is the traditional way that this occurs. But since Logan Paul is so tied to the US, and of course he is in Puerto Rico, but not free from the arms of the SEC there, and this is when they came up with the idea for the stealth launch. It actually launched on June 11th. The announcement came on August 18th. I think it was the 17th. Maybe it was 18th. Whatever it was, 17th or 18th. Maybe I got that exact date wrong. But the fact is, no one was supposed to know about these tokens during this time. Once the token is announced publicly, the valuation is expected to shoot up, generating massive gains for the early holders like the 4 of them. That's every project that's ever been launched. That's the hope. Now here we go, Coffeezilla talking about Paul versus Jake. This is where we get really fascinating or get some new information. Coffeezilla revealed that the top 5 biggest buyers of the token on the day of the launch, well, the top 2, of course, are crypto kings, supposedly. Now, they probably were, but the fact is, I don't think we exactly know 100%. I'm going to tell you why. Here he says, a bot is playing with our token. Kind of cool to watch it work. Look at the green, nothing to do but watch it. You can tell because they do repeat buys or sell same size. Of course, during this time, he's accumulating more coins. Now, if you remember from one of the Coffeezilla videos, he pointed out that at some point there was a message revealing after they buy all their tokens, the team, then they could get their friends and family in on the deal. That's what some of them did. And so some of this was friends and family that was getting in here. I don't think they were actually bots. There could have been some bots. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Logan did not want any selling. And what you're gonna see is a positioning to attempt to prevent people from selling. So here, he says, how did anyone get this token except for us? And none of us sold, question mark? What he's seeing is some of these addresses are starting to sell. Now, who are these people? I don't know. But what we do know is that this started making Logan very, very, very paranoid. Now on Jake's side, he's a mere advisor. He's only got a 5% share. That's only about 1.125% of the entire supply. Guys, it's a big amount. It's a small team. Of course, some of these people were getting more, but by devaluing an advisor has an important role with projects. Here we have this. Guys, this is fake. This did not actually happen. Now, was this the plan? Potentially. There is a part in one of the videos where they showed the distribution. There was supposed to be 1 trillion to the game, and then 500 billion to the founders, 25% of the tokens, and another 500 billion was supposed to be to the liquidity pool for regular users and investors to be able to get their piece of the pie. However, these tokens were never distributed. Only the 500 billion in the liquidity pool was what was distributed from the overall supply. So they keep pointing out he got 5% here. That's not a real number. Those were never actually given. So now we fast forward to the launch, September 2021. Around 11,250 wallets were holders before the transfer, but only some under 11,000 received their respective Zoo tokens, which Jake said in a leaked message was a decision by Paul and Ibanez, and he had no part in it. That's true. Out of all of these 250, less than 20 of them actually belonged to Crypto King. Many of these other wallet addresses that had gotten formed were either friends and family, possibly of Crypto King. I did speak to one guy who said that he was a friend of Crypto King and he did get in and he had all of his funds frozen in this. There were regular people that were actually hurt that didn't know the internal, like not just retail investors, but people that were coming in on the friends and family round. They actually got screwed as well. And it's created a lot of drama between, people on the team and people that they know. But every single address of Crypto King was in this blacklist. All of his tokens, they put all of his money in over that period where they were able to do this with a liquidity pool. They were all gone and he had nothing. He did not get distributed his tokens. He literally had nothing. Jake then messaged Paul in the chat, and this is, of course, is where things get very interesting. He accused them of stealing $40 million. And this is a very key point that I don't think anyone actually understood when you watch the Coffeezilla video, or one of them. Logan, you sold $40 million in tokens from me. You aren't that guy. This is very key here. Coffeezilla focused on you in the arms of an angel. Oh, Jake, trust me, bro. I'm that guy. This is not a flex like, oh yeah, bro, I'm that guy. This is an admission that he blacklisted Jake on purpose. This is the reason why CryptoZoo has to eventually give Crypto King 80% of the funds that he had taken. He never recovered 100%. Coffeezilla disclosed that Jake was able to sell around $6 million worth of Zoo tokens coming from the remaining wallets of his that weren't blacklisted, as well as the tokens that the CryptoZoo team returned to him. To my understanding, to my research, to my conversations, the $6 million number is absolutely not true. It is millions. What is it? 2 million? 3 million? I don't have that number. But I can tell you, and a lot of people will tell you, 6 million is not the right number. Why? Because this is not true. He did not have money coming from the remaining wallets. He didn't have any wallets on there. All of the money came from the tokens that the CryptoZoo team returned to him because Logan Paul admitted that he intentionally blacklisted his investment. Now, Jake confirmed he did sell tokens, but disputed that total amount reached 6 million. Sold tokens, but this is not accurate. And you gotta admit, Crypto King, look, he made millions of dollars, right? Like Coffeezilla always likes to tell you, millions. When you say millions, that doesn't mean you can't possibly have been in line to get screwed if you made millions. Well, I'm neutral on this, okay? Obviously, at the end of the day, Crypto King sold tokens that dumped the price that hurt retail investors. That's a fact. That's where he says later, maybe what he did was unethical or was immoral. But you just had all of your tokens that you had been investing in for a month. It was a lot of money. You just had them all blacklisted. All of the money you put in, the wallets are no good. What happened is when they launched a second coin, there was an airdrop, and they replaced all the tokens of everyone but those 250 addresses, including Crypto Kings. But think about this. If that money was gone and it was frozen, and then slowly the team starts sending you a chunk of those tokens, every chunk you get might be the last that you're going to get. And at this point, he wanted nothing to do with this project going forward. That's why he's been so honest with what happened. He's owned it. He said, yeah, it was probably unethical. It was probably immoral. I made some money, but I was trying to get out because they were trying to screw me. They did screw me by removing that investment. Now, I want people to understand, I'm not standing up for Crypto King because I know him up from Twitter or whatever the case may be. I'm just trying to give you a different perspective getting inside of the mindset of someone that was in the middle of this debacle. I think I would generally say he's in line with probably about where Logan Paul is here when it comes to being on the good actor, bad actor scale. I wouldn't put him with Eddie Ibanez. I also wouldn't put him on the same line of Jeff Levin. Somewhere in the gray area, Logan and Crypto King's relationship and what happened there is actually what turned them both into not the best actors in this situation. Of course, Coffeezilla added that while they can't track Paul or Levin selling their tokens, Ibanez did sell his for about 1.7 million based on his calculations. However, the middleman can't be contacted to confirm. And of course, always falling back to it's a symptom of a larger issue, which is people didn't actually care about the game, they just cared about the money. I think there's a lot of relational problems that started occurring here. You had Logan Paul getting paranoid. He didn't want anyone to sell. That seemed pretty apparent in a lot of these text messages. From what I've been told, he definitely did not want to sell. He wanted the long-term, large market cap of a viable game. He was in it for the long term. But when they did the first coin and people started selling, he got paranoid. He wanted to try to control the number of addresses and keep it very low. Now, you could speculate if you kept the addresses low and there were a lot of smaller amounts, then maybe somehow he could have actually had some smaller wallets and sold and made money. He says he didn't. We'll take him at his word on that. But there are some theories that in reality, that he did have some smaller wallets that he did sell. I'm not going to accuse him of that. I don't have proof. Then, of course, we have the apology, the response, not apology, the response from Logan Paul saying what type of idiot would work with unsavory individuals like Zach Kelling, Eddie Ibanez, says he's an idiot for working with con men, he made a mistake. But once again, he just misses the mark. I don't think he understands where this project is.
Even after 12 months of work, you've still managed to overlook one crucial piece of information. See, even though I've said it's coming so many times, you've assumed that CryptoZoo isn't being made. Who are you to decide when the development timeline ends? I got everything stolen from me in our community, stopped promoting publicly as soon as I knew the extent of the internal issues, took all of the heat on social, and you still published a defamatory hit piece fully knowing I was innocent just so you could enrich yourself in your $10 million studio. Sharp, but deeply unethical, dangerously misleading, and illegal. I suggest you use the money you got from pumping your Patreon to hire a good lawyer. You're gonna need it.
This is not the move, Logan. The team has fallen apart. You got a bunch of tokens. They're worthless. All the people that have invested in this have worthless tokens. Even if you build the game, what's the incentive? The tokens aren't worth anything, and people are gonna be scared to go in them again. It's time to cut bait. That's what needs to happen from this moment forward. People lost money. It's a bad situation. Logan's not going to go to jail for it. It wasn't illegal per se what happened. However, it just didn't work. It was a failure. At this point, holding on to this and trying to save something that seems to be unsavable, it's not a good use of your time. You're better to just say this is over. This is dead, go build something else. Maybe not a crypto project. You got an energy drink going right now you're probably doing pretty well with. Why don't you go make a bunch of money with something you can build with your huge platform and influence that isn't sketchy in the world of crypto and will keep you out of harm's way, and then just take some of that money and pay people back. If you open up a form where people have to prove that they bought and maybe you give people back, this is a reputational hit. It's going to hurt probably for a while. Maybe Coffeezilla makes more videos and finds more stuff, who knows? But the fact is, it's still better at this point to admit what happened, to admit the project is not gonna go anywhere, and move on to the next step, whatever that's gonna be for Logan. But to continue to bicker and go back and forth with Coffeezilla, it's just not smart. And I'm not saying this because I don't like you, and I'm not saying this because you're a bad guy. I don't think you are. I actually think this is a complicated situation. There's a lot of gray areas, and I think that you know how to make money and you know how to do it well, and you've got a lot of influence. You just ran into a place where you have to be a little more full of integrity. You've got to be a little more full of vigor to create something, not to take money in. You got to take the $2.5 million from the NFT eggs, pay the developers the money. Maybe this is different, but it's not. And I think continuing to see these threats back and forth in the lawsuits is not the move. Certainly, I would invite Logan and Coffeezilla to come on my channel because they don't want to go on either one's channel because it's a beta move to go on the other guy's channel. Well, you know what? It's definitely an alpha move to come take over my show. So there you go. But that is an offer. If they would want to come do that, we could host them in the studio and we can make it happen. They don't have to go to each other's studio, and it kind of solves the problem, or maybe someone else can open it up. It doesn't have to be me. But the fact is, people did get hurt in this situation. Those people that invested in this need to understand they lost their money. It sucks. You cry, you gnash your teeth. That's the crypto space. You live, you learn, you take the lesson, and you move on. We've all done it multiple times. Doesn't mean it's okay the way these projects continue to be predatory. I think that's something in the next cycle we're going to see some changes to. We need to start taking 3 steps forward, 1 step back, instead of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back in every single market cycle, whether it's Bitcoin, crypto, altcoins, NFTs, metaverse, whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, I try to stay as neutral as possible in this video. I give you guys some new facts and some new information that you didn't have before, some more context to kind of fill all of this out. I did have some pretty high level sources on this stuff, so obviously I can't reveal some of those sources, and it's a conversation, so I can't show anything. But the fact is, this all did happen. The context I gave you is accurate. I want to know down below in the comments, do you think Logan Paul can recover from this? He's recovered from a lot. I think that he probably will. What do you think is next for Coffeezilla? What should he look into next? That's all I got. Be blessed. Good boy out.